Dun, 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 dun. This is so cheesy. But I have finished the sweater. Don't worry, it's not all the way done. We're going to do all the finishing steps, and I still need to place pockets. But for people who might just be joining us and haven't been part of the whole series, we're knitting the sweater together, talking through every decision, customization, modification, every single thing that I think about while I'm knitting this garment, I have captured in video form, and today's no exception. So when we last left off, we were talking all about our sleeve planning, and I have finished the sleeves, and I did manage to get all of the sleeves done with the yarn I have, which if you followed the most recent couple of episodes in this series, episodes, I guess they're episodes, you'll know that plain yarn chicken was the name of the game. So I think they look great. I ended up modifying the sleeve as follows. So in the last episode, if you go back to it, I did have to correct some math. So I verbalized some math and it was incorrect. I did correct it in the description, but basically I had drawn the sleeve kind of sideways like this. And I'd said how many stitches were at the top and how many I wanted to end up at here. And this is what I do for every sleeve. Regardless of the pattern, I will do the math myself and decide what I want to actually do for decreases. So I took the top and the bottom, and then I took the difference in the number of stitches, which happened to be 16 stitches on this half that I wanted to decrease. And then I was like, and because each decrease round has 2 stitches, that should be 8 decrease rounds. But in actual fact, and I've got to explain it because I don't want incorrect information out there, in actual fact, because it's only half the sleeve, I'm decreasing 16 times to get those 16 stitches decreased, because on this other side, there's another 16 that need to get decreased. So long story short, what I ended up doing on the sleeve mod here was basically calculated how big it was here, how big I wanted it here, and I just did an even number of decreases across the sleeve, and it worked perfectly. They are not too bulky, but they have lots and lots of room up here, and they sit really nicely on my cuff like this. Yeah, that's backwards, but you get the idea. So it is different than the pattern itself, but what I was explaining last time was that you can do the sleeves however you want to do them, and I typically always remath the sleeves, and I usually also rip them out a couple times, and I went on this whole tangent in the last video about how I am always doing the first sleeve like 2 or 3 times. And in this time, for some reason, probably just because I said it, I actually didn't have to redo the sleeves at all. They were perfect the first time, and I'm going to say that's because of really good planning. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I'm going to say. But they look great. They're picked up really cleanly across the opening. They bunch in here, and we got a couple inches of ribbing. And the big question that I'm sure is on all of your minds is, how did we do with the yarn chicken? And let me tell you, so if you don't know what yarn chicken is, it's when you're getting close to running out of yarn. So I ended up making a couple modifications. So one of the mods I made was to make this button band a little bit thinner to make sure that I had enough yarn to be able to do these sleeves or these cuffs of the sleeves in my main color, which is this angst color. All the details are below. But let's see how we did. You are gonna probably laugh when you see how very little yarn I have left. Ready? Here it is. So this is all I have left. And this is excellent yarn management because all I have left to do is pockets and then finishing. And with the finishing, I don't have any seaming left to do. I've already done any seaming. So it's just the pockets that's going to use up this yarn. And that's it. So I did want to weigh them out, as I do, just because I do still need to do pockets. And this Doc's color has less left over than the rest. So the rest I'll have around the same amount. This has significantly less, mainly because when I did this seam up here, I used the Doc's color because it was on both sides of the front and the back. I used it to seam up here, which used a whole bunch extra yardage. It went like through here, and then it did a bind off here, and then it went over here. So it used a lot more yardage than any of the other colors of the stripes. But I want to make sure that I can check and see what I'm going to do for the pockets. And I will do the pockets in this video, at least that's what I plan to do. I'm going to take this out because I don't want this to be having any extra weight. So I'm going to weigh this. Ooh, that's only 3 grams. That's going to be really tight for what I need. So I might not be able to use that in the pockets, but I'll show you the pockets in a minute. All right, next up is Courtney. 7 grams, very respectful. And Courtney and Seether and Kurt should have similar amounts. Kurt maybe a little bit more. Okay, 9 grams. The reason I have more is because when I do the sleeves, obviously this one has a lot less width than this stripe up here. And so the ones that have the bigger stripes, like this and this stripe, will take more yarn than this and this stripe. In case you're curious. You may not be curious at all. Doesn't matter. Okay, so we got about 12 grams of the Kurt. I wrote them in the wrong order here, but that's okay. And my angst, 6 grams. And that's all because of my modifications that I made. If you go and see, which video would it be? But yeah, it was the button band modification. So it would have been like maybe yarn chicken, body planning. I can't even remember what I called that one. But go back and find it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crank into my pockets now. And I'm going to keep this handy because I'm basically going to trial and error to see if I'm going to have enough of this, which is docks. So if you go back to the one video that talks about Afterthought Pockets, it's one of the first ones after I actually cast on. And this is what the Afterthought pocket looks like. And this is like a technique. This isn't like specific to the pattern. If you want this pattern, please go buy it and support the designer. I don't give away any details that aren't publicly available on this. But it is an Afterthought pocket that is stated as one of the techniques in here. And this is more technique than it is a pattern detail. Ooh, look at all these to weave in later. Fun. But how it's constructed is we put a lifeline in on the top row of this stripe and a lifeline into the stitches and at the first row of this stripe. And in between we use some waste yarn. I used angst as a waste yarn. That was probably silly, but now you're going to see why I use waste yarn. I could have used anything for this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it out. And this is going to scare some people. But trust me, it's going to be fine. And what you'll notice is my stitches, something's going wrong here. Oh, I think I just kind of split the lifeline a little bit there. Yee! Don't worry. We're all okay. What's happening is the lifeline. Oh, are we okay? I'm going to have to split this. This lifeline went right in between part of the waste yarn. Don't mind me. Everything's fine. Okay. This is where we do it live. Well, not live, but I don't edit anymore. If I had to edit, I would never post anything. I'd rather just get it out here. But I will pause when I'm actually doing something too repetitive. But the whole point is here, you'll start to see it opening up. And because I have a lifeline on the top and the bottom, I'm not actually going to lose any of the stitches. So I can easily still get those stitches onto my needles. So I'm going to pause just because I can, and I'm going to come back to you when I'm at the end here. Okay, I'm back. So here's the big hole, the big scary hole. But you can see these stitches are held on a lifeline. So I'm not worried about losing these stitches because I will easily be able to add them back onto the needles, which is what I'm going to do next. But the whole point of an Afterthought pocket, what you do is you end up tucking this one behind and you knit this way to create the base of the pocket. And then in here, you just put sort of the edge of the pocket. And so all I need color-wise, and this is where yarn management is important, ideally I'll have enough of this color to just do a little top section here so it matches with this stripe. And now I need to have enough to do it on two pockets because there's one on each side. If not, it's no big deal. It just means that I'm going to have a different color sitting here than this. And then what I do on the inside, I can do anything. Ideally, I'll be able to use these 3 here to actually match this on the inside, but it doesn't really matter. So I can do whatever I want inside. But again, I'm going to try to do it the way I want, and I can use my measurements, although this is not a very precise. It'd be better if it was down to decimal points, but I don't have that scale up here or near me or with a battery. So we're not going to worry about that. But yeah, if you use something like a barber cord for a lifeline, then it's very easy to put the stitches back on the needle. But either way, all I'm doing is just picking up these live stitches, getting them back on my needle. I've got a circular needle, so it has pointy ends on both sides, so I don't even need to care about which direction. Now, one thing I will mention, I haven't mentioned it in a while, but if you're going to see me actually knit, and also you might be wondering why my stitches are twisted, don't worry, I know about it. It's because I am a combination knitter, which means that I purl with a yarn under instead of a yarn over. And that twists my stitches, and then I just untwist them when I'm actually working that stitch. All right, so now that I've picked up the stitches onto my needles, I don't need to have my lifeline in there anymore, so I just pull it out. There we go. And this is where I can actually start doing what the instructions tell me to do, and then I'm just gonna hope and pray that I will feel like I have enough yarn. I'm gonna work through the back loop because my stitches are twisted. If you don't know about twisted stitches, I will tell you. I don't know why I'm holding my arm so awkwardly here. I just got a glimpse of it. I will tell you, it's when the V has, it's coming over the top to the back like this. An untwisted stitch, which is how you really typically want to do it, is like this, where it goes front to back, right leg in front, left leg in the back. This is right leg in the back, left leg in the front. So I'm going to be knitting through the back loop, or turning my stitches. I can untwist them like that. And I'm just going to see how this goes. So I will come back to you once I've knit what the instructions say I should be knitting. And we'll see. Okay, so I would say I've confidently can say I've used as much of this yarn as possible. And the pocket liner, which is again through the front top, so not even the liner, would look like this. I could only squeeze out a couple rows, and I did one on each side. And I don't think that's too bad. So what I'm gonna do, the other option is to actually make the pocket liner in my main color to match all my cuffs and things like that, and it would be a little bit thicker. But what I'm gonna do, because I've already done this, and again, let me be clear, it's not ideal to be making all my garment decisions based on yarn management and playing yarn chicken. But for me, I don't want to need more of the yarn. Not that I don't love it, but it's a big investment for a lot of indie dyed yarn, and I'm trying to keep it, well utilized. So by using almost every last speck of it, I think that's amazing. But typically you wouldn't want to make your design decisions on how you're gonna, do things based solely on how much yarn you have left. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to finish the pockets, and then I'm going to decide if I'm going to keep this really thin little stripe as sort of the cuff of the pocket in the same color, or if I'm going to replace it with a thicker one in this angst color, which is the burgundy. And so what I'll do is I'll finish the pocket. Then I'll make that decision, and I might even just rip this little bit out because it's really quick, obviously, to knit up this little bit, and try one in the pink and one in the Doc's color, in the darker color, and just compare them and see which one I prefer at that point. And that's the beauty of it. Like, you can always rip it out. It's not like sewing and fabric where once you cut it, you're kind of you're stuck with it, I can always rip this back out and then I can put it back in if I want it. I know I have enough yarn to put it back in because I've got it there now. So I'm going to build up these pockets. So again, I'm going to be building down in here. And then what you do is you seam it along the bottom. And maybe I'll put a video up with some of that seaming. We'll see. But generally, that's the last finishing bit. So when I come back to you, I might have, I said that's the last finishing bit. It's not the last finishing bit. That's the last construction bit. Then I'll come back to you. I will have all of these ends to weave in. Not too many on the inside, just like I think I only had to change skeins once in the middle here. That's the inside. The back is just beautiful. But around the pockets, around the edges, and especially all the stripes and in the sleeve. So let's turn the sleeve inside out so we can see all those ends too. I'll come and show you what this looks like, how I hide and weave in my ends, and then we're going to be finishing it, which is blocking it, which is something I get a ton of questions on. And I'll talk you through my entire process for that as well. And once we're there, then we'll be done. And when we're done, so far I started this on June 1st. It is now June 17th today. Yep. Which is pretty crazy. I usually don't go this quick, but the weather has cooperated, and I think honestly just documenting it has been giving me some motivation to keep pushing forwards. And also I haven't spun any yarn in a long time. I'm doing Tour de Fleece, which starts near the end of June, so I'll be spinning for at least 3 weeks straight there. So I'm getting my knitting out of the way so I can make room for some spinning. But yeah, so when you come back, this will be construction done. Maybe I'll leave a little bit of seaming of the pocket on the inside to show you, but otherwise construction done. And we'll move on to finishing steps, which honestly can really make or break a project. Good finishing can be the difference between a good hand knit and an excellent hand knit. And then I'll show you the compare and contrast between this one and the first one I made when I first learned how to knit garments, which if you go back to part 1 of this whole series, you'll be able to see it there, but it is like wrong yarn, wrong tension, wrong needle size, wrong gauge, wrong everything, and it shows. And this is just such a different experience. And the only difference is knowing what this knitting process is, because I've done it a whole bunch of times. I know what works and doesn't work, for me at least, and getting confidence and spending time learning things like yarn tension. And I do talk about these all in different parts through the series. So thanks again for listening again. I know I always end up having these be between like 15 and 20 minutes, and that's okay, because I think it's really important way to get a perspective on how other people are thinking things through, to help you gain confidence as a knitter, because I know I've definitely gained a lot of confidence over the last few years. And I want to share it with all of you. So enjoy the knitting process. Enjoy, hopefully, being able to make something that you really, really, really love. And I'm excited to finish it with you. That was like a really, really long sign off. You probably left a while ago, but thanks, and I'll see you at the next one.